personal level. It would be very interesting to explore the dynamic of fighting for the light, yet being a descendant of the dark. Since Rey was a young girl, she has been isolated from the world, living as a lone scavenger on the desert planet of Jakku. For all we know, she is an orphan, abandoned by parents who may very well be long dead. If Rey were to discover that she is the descendant of one of the most powerful and maniacal Sith Lords in history, you can only imagine how this would affect her emotionally and mentally, how it would change her ambition and destiny. Would she feel pressured to change her allegiance because of her ancestry? As the last surviving heir to the Empire, will she feel obligated to live up to Palpatine's legacy? Luke Skywalker is faced with a similar test in the original trilogy. After discovering that Darth Vader is his father, Luke is tempted to join the dark side in Return of the Jedi. But he resists, and he successfully brings his father back to the light. The biggest difference between Luke and Rey is really their childhood. Luke was raised by loving parental figures, his aunt and uncle. He had a life, he had friends, he had family. All things Rey does not have. Luke had some semblance of a future to look forward to. He also had a reason to fight for the good guys. Being that Rey has lived in complete isolation without any friends or family to speak of, she may leap at the chance to avenge her deceased family, no matter how evil or cruel her family legacy is. Like joining the Resistance, it would present Rey another chance to be a part of something bigger than herself. Rey did form friendships with Han, BB-8, and Finn in The Force Awakens, but these relationships are only days old. Rey doesn't have that same incentive to fight for the light side. Also, it's very apparent in The Force Awakens that Rey was obsessed with the thought of reuniting with her family. She constantly tells people that she wants to return to Jakku because her family is going to one day return for her. If Rey was to learn that she is a descendant of Palpatine, this obsession with reuniting with her family may give her enough cause to abandon the Resistance in favor of the First Order.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
With less than 5 hours remaining in the sequel trilogy, it may be difficult to address all the implications of Rey being related to Palpatine, but how awesome would it be if she was Palpatine's heir? That's why I said it was more of wishful thinking for me. I want it to be true more than I believe it actually is true, but there is some evidence that supports the theory. The first evidence we have to link Rey and Palpatine is fighting style. The similarities in their fighting styles were quickly noticed by fans during Rey's duel with Kylo Ren. Her duel with Ren was one of the earlier examples of how powerful she is and could potentially become. If Rey was the descendant of Palpatine, it would explain why she was so goddamn powerful in the first place. In his prime, Palpatine was known to match the fighting style of any opponent he faced in combat, no matter the difficulty of the fighting form. Notice how in his duels with Mace Windu and Yoda, he is able to adapt to their respective forms with little to no effort. Mace Windu was a master of the 7th fighting form, which focuses on channeling both the light and dark sides of the Force. Palpatine was able to fend off Windu long enough for Anakin to arrive and finish the job. Yoda was a master of the 4th fighting form, which employs acrobatic jumps, twirls, and twists to drive power into bold attacks. As challenging as this fighting form is, Palpatine was able to expertly adapt to this intense fighting style, and he even manages to disarm Yoda. Yoda is forced to retreat and goes into exile on Dagobah. As a Yoda fanboy, it's hard for me to admit that he lost this fight, but give Palpatine credit. He took advantage of his surroundings, and his extensive knowledge of the Force helped him defeat one of the most powerful Jedi in history. In The Force Awakens, Rey has shown the ability, like Palpatine, to match the fighting style of an experienced, albeit injured, Kylo Ren. Not only does she match Kylo Ren, but she starts to overpower him as the duel goes on, and by the end of the duel, Kylo Ren is laying on the ground, defeated. There is one move in particular that Rey consistently uses against Kylo Ren in this duel. With both hands on the lightsaber's hilt, she jabs at Ren with a horizontal stab motion, thrusting her shoulder forward and throwing all of her weight behind the attack. This is the exact same move that Palpatine uses several times against Mace Windu in Revenge of the Sith. Rey is shown using this shoulder thrust move 2 more times against Kylo Ren. Since this move is not found in any traditional fighting form, it's an indication of the fighter's ability to improvise by creating their own fighting style in the middle of a duel. Rey and Palpatine are the only 2 characters in Star Wars who are shown to use this horizontal stabby stab type move, and they are both also shown to have the ability to improvise fighting form. Rey being the master improviser, since she wasn't even trained in any single fighting form that we know of. Our second piece of evidence involves Rey's name. A lot of the names in Star Wars usually have a double meaning. The most famous example is Darth Vader. The name Vader is derived from the German word for father. Obviously, Darth Vader is the Dark Father. In fact, most Sith Lords have names that contain double meanings. Darth Sidious derives from the word insidious. Darth Tyrannus derives from the word tyrannical. Darth Endidu is an anagram for undead. And Darth Maul literally translates to hammer. Our heroes on the light side of the Force also have names of double meaning. Luke is a biblical name that derives from the Latin word for light. Yoda derives from the Hebrew word for wisdom. And Han Solo, he's a loner. That Han, he's always, solo. Please don't include that in the Han Solo movie. I've always believed that Rey's name was simply meant to be a letter shy of gray, a clever way to symbolize the resolution of gray through refined Jedi sight. The answer to the prophecy found in the Journal of the Wills, Rey will become the Grey Jedi. The name Rey actually translates to king in Spanish, derived from the Latin rex. History tells us that kings are neither good nor evil, but they are royalty. If Rey is revealed to be the descendant of Palpatine, then her name would make perfect sense. Some may even consider her to be the true heir to the Empire, and then John Williams would have to craft her a new theme. A more subtle piece of evidence that links the two characters is music. Star Wars is famous for its iconic score, crafted by legendary composer John Williams. Star Wars is the type of movie where you can watch any scene on mute and you can still hear the music that accompanies it. One of the techniques that John Williams employs in his original Star Wars score was the use of leitmotifs. Leitmotifs are defined as short, constantly reoccurring musical phrases that are usually associated with a particular person, place, or idea. The use of leitmotifs was made famous through the operas of the 19th century composer Richard Wagner. John Williams employed this technique by crafting individual themes for specific characters within the Star Wars universe. For example, the ominous and intimidating Imperial March that signals the presence of Darth Vader. The sweet melodic phrase that accompanies Princess Leia throughout the original trilogy. Or my personal favorite, the Force theme that is heard while Luke Skywalker watches the binary sunset on his home planet of Tatooine. Rey's theme was probably the best piece of new music that came out of The Force Awakens. I already feel nostalgic when I hear it. I'm instantly taken back to the scene where Rey is being dwarfed by a massive Star Destroyer, banging on her canteen for one last drop of water before she begins her descent down one of the great dunes of Jakku. The flutes begin to play, and John Williams proves that he's still got it. But Rey's signature theme may have darker implications. John Williams has confirmed that Rey's theme was inspired by the Force theme, but her theme also shares similarities with the Emperor's theme. Let's listen to Palpatine's theme first. So on piano, Palpatine's theme goes like this. Now let's listen to the ostinato from Rey's theme. Now, if you play the ostinato without ornament, removing the extra notes, you are left with a distilled version of Rey's theme that goes like this. Now, let's go back to Palpatine's theme. And now, Rey.
Oh, 77.
They are pretty similar. Also notice how both themes begin with,
okay, here we go. Hey, kid, don't you got a game tonight? How many terraces is this? That's $1 million hole.
with brass-based dissonances, with the Emperor's theme transforming into something more sinister and dark, and Rey's theme gradually becoming more calm and spirited. Of course, these two themes were composed almost 30 years apart, and in keeping with the traditional sound of Star Wars, John Williams could have coincidentally made them sound similar. Would John Williams actually know the truth of Rey's parentage? It's possible, but a part of me just doesn't think the people behind The Force Awakens are that clever. Don't get me wrong, I love the movie, but that would be David Lynch, George R.R. Martin, Kendrick Lamar level of subtlety. John Williams has been known to subtly include the Emperor's theme in places where you wouldn't expect it to be heard. A variation of Palpatine's theme can be heard during the celebration on Naboo. The theme is significantly sped up, creating a more exciting and celebratory atmosphere, symbolizing Palpatine's secret victory from the shadows, the Phantom Menace. If John Williams did intentionally craft Rey's theme as a variation of the Emperor's theme, this would be expert-level subtlety. Intentional or not, it is food for thought. Our fourth piece of evidence linking Rey to Palpatine is the defining characteristic of many Sith Lords who have appeared in Star Wars: anger in the form of rage. The entire prequel trilogy is dedicated to the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker. And throughout the trilogy, he is shown to have extreme fits of uncontrollable rage. Anger and the fear of death is what ultimately led to Anakin's fall to the dark side, and his rage made him that more powerful. In The Force Awakens, we see that same uncontrollable rage from Kylo Ren. He struggles with controlling his emotions and eventually surrenders to the pull of the dark side. Palpatine is a bit different from his Sith counterparts. While he does show moments of intense rage and anger, he also possessed the uncanny ability to control his emotions, which basically supports the idea that Palpatine was a full-fledged psychopath. By crafting a non-threatening, good-natured persona, Palpatine was able to rise through the ranks of the Old Republic, all the way to Supreme Chancellor and ultimately Emperor. When he finally gains control of the galaxy, he no longer has to hide his rage, and he unleashes his unlimited anger, fear, uncontrollable rage. These usually aren't qualities that are found in many Jedi. Throughout The Force Awakens, Rey is shown to consistently lose her temper. She struggles to hold back her rage during her duel with Kylo Ren, and even contemplates killing him. In The Force Awakens novelization, a voice calls out to her, presumably Snoke, and tells her to kill Ren. For a brief moment, she considers the voice, but the opportunity is missed. If Starkiller Base was never destroyed, maybe Rey succumbs to her rage and goes in for the kill. I mean, look at her. She's fucking pissed. Look at that face. That's a Palpatine face. Palps! Luke Skywalker was facing the same test in Return of the Jedi. He has defeated Darth Vader, and the Emperor tells him to kill his father and
You gotta switch.
by the Emperor's side.
My
Luke decides to
gosh.
spare his father's life and
Switch, bruh.
he wasn't separated by a crack in a giant planet. This decision was his alone. Rey, on the other hand, definitely would have went in for the kill if Starkiller Base wasn't destroyed. The opening voiceover for the second Last Jedi trailer features the voice of Snoke, and he says, "When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power." While he very much could be talking to Kylo Ren, many
What are you doing?
is actually addressing Rey. Once again, raw, untamed power, the
God.
ability to control your emotions.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
Compared to Palpatine, it makes sense as to why Rey cannot control her emotions. Palpatine was born into a rich family, and he was raised on the wealthy planet of Naboo. He spent his life in politics, crafting relationships, and learning how to manipulate those around him. Palpatine had it easy. All he had to do was learn. In the case of Rey, she
stupid,
grew
bro?
up alone on a desolate
What are you
planet,
doing?
but herself to depend on. Naturally, she had to develop extreme survival skills if she wanted to survive. Anger, fear, and rage come naturally to Rey. They were all necessary traits for her survival. What leaves this theory unfinished is the actual biological link between Rey and Palpatine. Since the time span between episodes 6 and 7 is about 30 years, it's impossible for Rey to be Palpatine's daughter. She would have to be his granddaughter or great-granddaughter. Throughout the original and prequel trilogy, Palpatine is never seen with a wife or mistress, but it's not crazy to think that the Emperor of the Galaxy had a secret love affair. When you're the king of the world, it really doesn't matter what you look like. The other possibility of relation between Rey and Palpatine is one of biological replication. The idea that Rey is actually a clone of Palpatine. This is probably the most far-fetched and out-of-left-field piece of evidence we have for this theory, if you can even call it evidence. But the idea of a Palpatine clone is not foreign to the Star Wars mythology. The Star Wars comic Dark